Sesquipedalian.
Again, you have an example of a seemingly ephemeral apparition, that seems solid enough to where this woman was actually having a conversation with it.
Right.
And then it leaves tracks. So, I mean, all of these things, we talked about the vocalizations last time and how Terrell in his apparitions book talks about this one apparition that actually yelled so loud it actually set somebody back on their heels. Now, the point that I'm making all through the book is that all of these people are talking about, this is definitely a sign that Sasquatch is present in this area. And I can look at every one of those things and say, there's definitely a case in poltergeist lore where poltergeist has done that.
Right.
Every one of them.
And the thing is, I mean, finding what looks like large primate tracks in an area that you believe a large primate lives in is exactly what you expect. It's a very logical conclusion to come to.
Yeah, exactly. If you have concluded that such and such an area is a Bigfoot hotspot, I don't like either one of those terms, but if you've decided that that's the case, then if you have a phenomena and energy in the woods that is behaving like a poltergeist and it's listening to all this stuff, then it's going to say, oh, cool, I'm going to leave 16-inch tracks down on the riverbed. That'll really get them going. And the more detailed I can make them, the better the more they get going. And again, I'm not discounting the idea that there could be a bipedal primate out there.
Yeah.
Especially in some of the wilder wilderness areas. I'm okay with that. But I still think there's something mysterious going on out there in the woods too.
Hello, folks. It's the Lord of Odd, the Fortean Digital Shaman, and co-host tonight, none other than MT Paranormal Live, Mr. T. And we have a very special guest tonight, none other than W.T. Watson, author of, 5 or 6 books, something like that. Depending
It's,
on which one. Which number you want, you choose. And Mr. Watson, thank you for joining us. All 6'7" foot of you. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I have that in common with the Sasquatch out there. I have to wear bright colors when I go out in the woods just to be sure that I don't have anybody mistake me for Sasquatch.
Mr. T, if I could ask you a favor, Mr. T, if you could keep track with the comments and make sure they're posted up there so people know that, because I won't be able to focus on that. And then when you're talking on a second, thank you, sir. Thank you. So, sorry about that, Mr. Watson.
Oh,
So I was listening to the interview on where did the road go? The radio a few weeks ago. I don't know, it's about a month ago or so when you did that 2-part series. And I was like, man, this dude beat me to the punch. Forest Poltergeist. I gotta have this guy on because this guy he's cued in on something here that's a big part of what we're experiencing out there in the woods, especially those of us involved in Bigfootery. I have first of all a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Should I call you what?
You can call me Travis.
Travis?
I use W.T. Watson as my writing name, but everybody in my life calls me Travis.
Okay, Travis. Travis, what possessed you to start writing books about such things as Canadian Sasquatch or Forest Poltergeist? What made you, of all things, go down this road, man?
Well, actually, I have to go way back, like 50 plus years back. My dad was actually a UFO experiencer. He had an encounter during the 50s with a cigar-shaped craft, purple lights out in the desert beyond San Bernardino, California. Told that story to anybody who'd listen. That story never varied. And, so it got me interested in the unknown, I guess, the mysteries out there. And I've been reading and researching and nosing around in those topics ever since. I started writing books back in, I guess the first one was published in 2019. I had published a novel previously. One of the covers that you showed up there is called Hunting the Beast. That's actually a fiction work, but it has some of my ideas in it too. But then I had written this book about a black dog, which is a type of apparitional being. And the folks that published it asked me, could you write a nonfiction book about this? It seems like you know an awful lot about this stuff. I said, well, yeah, I did a lot of research before I wrote the novel. And so I did some more research. I went down the rabbit hole and discovered that the phantom black dog apparition is not just a thing that exists in the Great Britain and Ireland, but also in North America and South America. That got me going. I wrote Phantom Black Dog book. Then I wrote Mysteries in the Mist, which is about the mist and fog and clouds paranormal. After that, let's see, that was Canadian Monsters and Mysteries. After that was shortly after I moved to Canada. Then I started writing about Sasquatch in Sasquatch Canada, and then moved on to the Forest Poltergeist. So I can honestly say that I've been reading and researching and studying archives and all that sort of thing since I was in elementary school. I mean, by the time I got out of 6th grade, I had read Ivan Sanderson's book on Abominable Snowman, which, if you've ever seen it, is like this thick. You know?
Oh, I love the book. I actually read that book. I actually read it.
Great book. Yeah, I mean,
it's really.
book. It's an excellent resource.
John A. Keel is another one you people need to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I discovered Keel here in life, but another one, John Keel. I really enjoyed those kinds of Frank Edwards, the guy named Frank Edwards, wrote a series of books called Stranger Than Science, and a couple of other titles that were just collections of Forteana. There were UFO stories, there were stories about weird things falling from the sky. There were some ghost stories, there was, some Sasquatch stuff in there. I love that stuff. Just ate it up. The other thing that really got me into the whole the field too is, after my dad had told me this incredible UFO story, I also happened to pick up Ripley, believe it or not, comic book about ghost stories. And again, I was 9. I was eating that stuff up, and before I knew it, I was just gobbling up everything I could find in the library, and I've been doing it ever since. So that's kind of how I got into it.
It's very interesting. You said
I think of
9.
myself.
I just entered. That's very interesting. You said 9 to me, because I just interviewed Stan Gordon, and he said he started doing this stuff when he was 10. This year, 65 years of him doing this kind of stuff. Now, what's interesting about Stan is he's never had any kind of encounter whatsoever. Have you?
Not, I haven't seen a Bigfoot, I haven't seen a UFO or any of that kind of thing. Most of my experiences have been more along the lines of synchronicities.
Oh yeah.
Just these coincidences that seem to have meaning to me. And I've had a couple of interesting things. I lived in a little house in a place called Angola, New York, which is about 45 minutes south of Buffalo. And that house was right across the road from a large state park, a 700-acre state park. And there was some interesting things going on in the forest there. One of the weird things that happened to me when I lived in that house is I am not afraid of the dark, okay, at all. I don't have any hesitation about wandering around the woods in the dark.
Well, you're 6'7" for one thing. That kind of helps.
That helps. Yeah. But I've done a lot of night hiking and that sort of thing in my younger days. So I don't. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh my god, it's dark. I'm not going anywhere now. But when I lived in that house, in the fall and in the spring, there were about 2 weeks where I just absolutely could not have the curtains open at night.
2 weeks.
I knew something was out there. It was a very specific time period. I knew something was out there, and I knew it was watching me, but I had no idea. I just couldn't bear to have the curtains open at night. Rest of the year, no problem at all. We had the curtains open all the time. There was, you'd see all kinds of deer and fox and all kinds of fun stuff running around in our yard. But those 2 weeks, it was like, my wife was like, "What the hell?" I was like, I don't know, but I don't want it. I don't want anything. I don't want those curtains open. The other thing that happened to me while I was there, I had to walk down to the end of the street that I lived on to catch a bus to go to work in the morning. And I would be walking down. I was walking down the road one morning in the spring. I seem to recall it being in the spring, and there was this big old huff off in the woods. It was like I later I was describing it to my wife. I said it sounded like a dragon making exhaling out in the forest there. No idea what that was. Could have been a Sasquatch for all I know. I have no idea what it was. It's one of those things that you categorize and say, okay, that was weird. I have no idea, but it was weird. And the third thing that happened to me when I lived there is we were standing out on our back balcony one night, and there was this sound coming up the road behind us. And the only thing that I can think of, the only sound that I can think of to describe it as, if you've watched any Jurassic Park movies, the sound that the raptors make
Hmm.
Um, and it was coming. It was coming up the road, and it freaked my stepson out so bad he had to go back inside. He's just like, I don't want to be out. I don't want to see if anything pops out of the woods. I don't want to know about it. Right.
Hmm.
We didn't see anything. And I have no idea what it was. My best guess, if I had to, take a stab at it, I would have to guess it was some kind of an owl. If I was looking for a natural explanation for it. But I researched. I went on ornithological sites and I researched the different owl calls, and I couldn't find anything that sounded exactly like what we heard that night. But I had no idea what it was. And it was just one of those things that you just kind of categorize as a word and, and go on. Yeah. Now those are the experiences in this world, day to day, ordinary consciousness and so forth. Sometimes in meditation I'll have some other interesting experiences, but that's probably a topic for another time.
Sure. So, what is your background? You mind me asking? So,
Background as far as
like mine's like in environmental science, management, ecology. I have no background. What's your background? Right.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, sure.
I was working in security at the time that I was in college, and I thought, hey, I'll do this security administration thing, and maybe it'll get me a job. And it didn't turn out that way. I actually I ended up working in banking for commercial banking for a period of time, and then I'm currently in the insurance industry. I'm a claims examiner when I'm not writing paranormal books. So, but yeah, I have that's my bachelor's degrry. And
I remember.
obviously,
Remember the old
as
show Paratopia? Remember that? Remember that? You remember Jeremiah?
vaguely, I'm pretty sure I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's Jeff is no longer with us, but Jeff and Jeremy. Jeremy's been on what's the guy's name? Sierra. What's the what's the name of the guy that does the host of the show that I watch?
Don't know.
Where did the road go? What's his name?
Soraya.
Soraya. Sorry, Soraya. Sorry, I'm just like got 20 other things. But he had Jeremy on. Anyways, they interviewed a guy who was a insurance claim agent up in I think it was Canada about crop circles. To just wonder, have you ever done anything like that by chance? Looked into anything? Oh no, cattle mutilations. That's what it was. Cattle mutilations.
Okay, yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to get into that stuff. It just feel, one of the things that people are, always ask you about is, well, what about this? What about that? Blah blah. They have their favorite weird thing that they're interested in, right? This topic is so broad that you can't possibly be an expert in everything, right? I think of myself as a Fortean, so I am interested in all of the different high strangeness out there. But you can't possibly be expert in all that stuff,
I say all of us are.
There's just so much
digital,
of it.
I say all of us, as I call myself, a Fortean digital shaman. I think all of us are that at this point. So.
Kind of
digital
like
part.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are wondering, where's Mike and all this? Mike, the second half will be part of the show, but I want to. The first half is just be me and Mr. Watson, because Mike has a lot to add to this to the show. Because obviously, those of us who know Mike, he's out in the field doing research out in the woods, so he's going to corroborate his stories along with what Mr. Watson. So if you're wondering why he's not talking right now, he's the one managing the chat. In the second half, I'll be managing the chat. So that's the reason why he's not talking. So sorry about that, Mr. Watson. I just want to make sure everybody knows what's going on. It's like, how's come Mike's not talking? So, well, the other Mike, Mr. T, he will be talking. This Mike right now is talking. The guy that most people don't really hear.
Soraya was actually a big part of big impetus behind this book, because the question that he asks on where did the road go is something that I was trying to answer in this book.
he said any number of times on any number of versions of Where Did the Road Go, he's asked this question. It's like, if you took all of the disturbances in the forest that people are reporting as being related to Sasquatch, and you took them and you put them in a house, you'd have a poltergeist case. Oh, and I was taught. I've talked to him any number of times, and I said to him one night after after we had or maybe before we actually got on the air, I asked him, "So, are you going to write a book about this? I mean, that's a really interesting idea. Are you going to write a book about it?" He says, "Oh no, I don't really have time for that." I said, "Do you mind if I write a book about it?" He was like, "Well, no, go ahead." So, I mean, that the idea for this book actually came from Sarai, and I give him credit for it whenever I get a chance. And obviously people like Tim Renner and Joshua Cutchin and those guys are all very
Tim's
much
interviewed me.
on board on this. Yeah. I mean, they're all very much on board with this idea that I mean, there's something more going on out there than just a large bipedal primate in the woods. As I've said on any number of occasions, and anybody who's ever listened to an interview with me will know, I do not discount the idea that there could be a physical creature. I live in Canada. There are hundreds of thousands of square miles of wilderness here. We actually have a Lazarus species that was declared extinct and then recovered in the 1950s. It's a wood bison. It's one of the largest land animals in North America. So if we can lose a wood bison for several decades, there's no reason that a Sasquatch couldn't exist in the woods up here.
Right.
So I don't have, people are always like, "Oh, well, you're just all into this woo and everything." And it's like, no, I don't discount the idea that there could be a physical creature. If somebody hauled one out of the woods tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. But I also think that there's a whole heck of a lot else going on out there. That's, somebody commented earlier that it's all connected.
And Mr. T and I can confirm that there is a lot more going on in that.
Oh yeah.
From our own personal experience and our own.
I can confirm it from personal experience too. But I don't spend a lot of time out in the woods looking for Sasquatches or anything, but just in my own personal, spiritual quest and going out into wilderness areas and doing meditation and that sort of thing. There's all kinds of interesting stuff going on out there.
Oh yes, there is, absolutely. And you don't have to go very far to actually have that happen.
No,
like I said,
I can walk down to my creek over here next to my house and and have a paranormal experience if I get into the right frame of mind. So
yes, even closer than that if you want. So this whole thing you listening to your interview and some stuff that's covered in your book, you talk about stuff. Well, one of the things I like is your phrase about the world hide and seek champion Sasquatch. I love that phrase because that's perfect. You also talked about strong kinetic activities when it comes to poltergeist, and we'll be talking about that too. Type A hauntings, porting manifestations. Talk about the Enfield case, the Black Monk case. You talk about what else? Oh, silent. I love this one. Siloing. Sasquatch siloing, what you call it. Yeah. I think that's an excellent phrase. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. I also want to share I'm going to talk to you my personal experience with my second encounter with Sasquatch in my backyard. And you talking in the interview, you talk about make sure you know what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And because you could cause yourself a lot more problems. And I ended up having that experience that lasted not only 3 days of living hell, but then it continued for a little longer because I had no idea what was going on. And everybody that I was talking to were even more clueless than me when what was going on. So whether in the Bigfoot community or in the religious community and all that kind of stuff. There's sort of interfacing between humans and poltergeists, psychokinetic activities, and smells, rock throwing, tree knocking, tree breaks, tree structures, tree nests, the silence, distortion of like time and etc. Missing time. So we got a lot of things to talk about, but and if you want that interview, that 2-part interview, you guys need to go. I think I left a link, and if I haven't, I'll remember to put a link with it. So to listen to that interview. But let's see, where do we go with this? So let's talk first about, because I find this fascinating, Sasquatch siloing. What do you mean by that?
So when you look at Forteana in general, okay, when you look at all the high strangeness that's available out there, when you talk about Sasquatch, when you talk about UFOs, when you talk about ghosts and hauntings and those kinds of things, talk about all the other weird things like strange things falling from the sky and falls of frogs and all that kind of fun stuff. What you find a lot of times is that people get interested in one thing. Okay. For instance, Sasquatch, right? And we all know, your typical Sasquatch kind of researcher is, the guy that's up banging around in the woods, and he's looking for a bipedal primate. Now, the Sasquatch researchers, I have tremendous respect for people that go out and do this stuff on a regular basis. I really do. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes money. They're invested in what they're doing. And they become very expert in that particular field. Okay, so if you talk to your Sasquatch researcher, they're going to talk about the work of John Green and Ivan Sanderson and some of the other great names in Sasquatch research, and they might talk about Ken Gerhardt and all these people that have actually done research and been out in the field and done all these things and written books, and almost all of them have that idea of Sasquatch as a bipedal primate, an unknown species, basically. And they don't take into consideration anything outside of that box. Okay, you see the same kind of siloing thing happening a lot in UFO research, where a lot of the people, maybe the majority of the people in UFO research, and that seems to be changing now, but back in the UFO, a lot of the research, you find people that are, it's all nuts and bolts crafts, aliens from other galaxies or whatever, and not taking into consideration any of the folkloric considerations that people like Rock Valet, for instance, have. See the same thing with ghosts and hauntings. The people who are exploring ghosts and hauntings seem to be of the opinion that everything is like some remnant of a human being after death. And what happens is that all of these people are in silos. Okay, they're very familiar with and expert in their particular theory or thought, right? But they're not looking at the wide range of paranormal experience to see that there are things that happen in other areas of research that have direct bearing on the things that they're looking at. And the Forest Poltergeist is just a good example of this. It's just one of many examples, but it's a good example of this. You have in Sasquatch lore, what's typically referred to as a Class B encounter. In other words, people have not seen a Sasquatch, but there's been a disturbance in the forest. There's wood knocking, there's rock throwing, there are vocalizations. There's all this kind of stuff that's going on out in the woods. My thesis in the Forest Poltergeist is very clear. There's nothing that happens out in the woods in those Class B encounters that you can't explain by relating to the poltergeist research.
Well, before we go any further, explain to us what a poltergeist is. Please.
So poltergeist
what's
actually
between a ghost and a Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff? What is the difference?
Okay. So a poltergeist is actually a very specific set of haunting, basically, for want of a better word. I don't particularly like the word haunting. I don't think that these energies are actually setting out for them usually to to make people's lives miserable, but whatever. We'll use that word because people know what it means, right? A poltergeist is a very particular type of haunting. The word comes from the German. It means something like noisy spirit or noisy ghost. And the thing about poltergeists that sets them apart from other hauntings, where you may have some physical phenomena, but the hauntings not typically characterized by physical phenomena. It may be more voices, feelings, cold spots, that sort of thing. In this case, the poltergeist is a very physical phenomena. It is characterized by physical phenomena happening in the haunting site. So things moving, rapping on the wall, which coordinates with your wood knocks, for instance. Um, things flying through the air. I talk about in the Black Monk case, somebody getting in the head with a Lego.
So may I interrupt a little bit real fast?
Sure.
You said rapping on the walls. We also find this same kind of experiences with those who claim that it's Sasquatch doing that in their houses. So
yeah, exactly. But you have dozens, maybe even hundreds of examples in poltergeist lore of that particular phenomena, that particular energy pounding on walls. And it certainly is the case that you see that again in Sasquatch, quote unquote Sasquatch encounters, where people have something banging on the side of their trailer, their house, their cabin, whatever it is. They don't actually see it. And again, the Sasquatch researcher jumps to Sasquatch, whereas a paranormal researcher might say, "Hey, you got poltergeist in your house," This is what. So the poltergeist is, a very specific set of haunting that has very physical phenomena attached to it. And we don't know. Sasquatch is typically described as a large bipedal primate that exists out in the woods. But a lot of the things that Sasquatch researchers associate with Sasquatch, the tree knocking, the stone throwing, and so forth, can also be explained, referring to the poltergeist phenomena. So there's a lot of overlap there. And this is kind of the idea of this book, and the idea that I want to get across to people is thought that, we need to get outside of the silo. We need to get out of, Sasquatch research is this, and, UFO research is this, and so on and so forth, and look at the field in general and say, hey, there are things over here can explain things over here. And look at all of these different things and say, oh wow, there's folklore that exists that talks about creatures existing in the forest, that may or may not be actual physical creatures. There's just so much stuff. There's so much information out there that's being ignored, really. I had a situation, just as an example of siloing. I had a situation a while back where there was a dogman report in Pennsylvania, and I was, dogman has been, it's one of my areas of interest. I'm big fan of the late Linda Godfrey. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to reach out to this researcher and see, what more they have about this. I emailed this guy, who I will leave unnamed. And I said, so see that you had a dogman report and da da da. And this guy writes me back and says, "Oh no, it wasn't a dog man. It was a Sasquatch." I'm like, okay. According to the witness account, this was a 6 foot tall, very muscular creature with ears atop its head that were pointed like a German Shepherd, and a snout, a long snout that stuck out from its face like a dog. But this individual was a Sasquatch researcher, so therefore anything odd running around out in the woods had to be a Sasquatch. That's a great example of siloing. Okay.
What's the saying you guys are saying? If it's in the woods, it has to be.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. So that's a great example of siloing. You see the same thing happening in, and you also see researchers going into these situations and these encounters and picking out just the thing that they're interested in. So, Stan Gordon, who you talked about earlier, was very good about documenting all the weird stuff that happened in a particular area when he went to investigate. But for instance, yeah, in Pennsylvania. So, for instance, typically the way things would work is, the Sasquatch researcher would go out and he would take, or she would take, the witness report about these giant bipedal primate things that they had seen out in their farm field, but would ignore the UFO sighting that happened, earlier in the evening. The UFO researchers would come out and research, take the evidence for the UFO and completely ignore the Bigfoot stuff. And they both would ignore the anomalous lights that were seen in the forest for 3 days prior to all this stuff happening.
Right.
So this is what I'm talking about siloing is we need to look at the complete picture. If you go out to investigate a Bigfoot sighting, one of the questions that should be in your on your pad is, so has anything else strange happened to you? And from the field researchers that I've talked to, almost invariably, if you actually ask that question,
all sorts of high strangeness.
More than 50% of the time, you're going to get a reply that, oh yeah, our house is haunted. I saw a UFO a couple of years ago. There's weird lights running around in our forest. There's all kinds of weirdness that happens. And we need to get a complete picture of what's going on with these witnesses instead of just focusing on one little thing that's going to prove our one little theory. There's a whole wide range of strangeness out there, and we need to pay attention to all of it, I think.
So basically what you're saying is we need to have a more holistic approach to this. We need to stop being compartmentalized and stop thinking that there's our one little section of interest is going to be the answer, especially if we go forward with this and try to have a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with, if it's even possible. That's another question in its own right.
That's another question altogether. Is it even possible to know, to get quote unquote, this is the other thing is, you have so many people out there that are doing research that are like, they're going to get the answers. It's like, no, you're not. That's why they call it a mystery. And if you're going to be involved in this field, you need to have a very high tolerance for mystery.
And uncertainty. And uncertainty.
Yeah. I mean, there may come a time when we get some answers about some of these things. But I don't think you're ever going to solve the whole deal, because it seems like the phenomena is just happy to mess with you. So as soon as you think
the trickster spirit is a big part of all this. My own personal experience is every time I think I got my shit together, something,
Mhm.
whatever's paying attention to me reminds me that I don't have a clue what the heck's going on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just like I get so close to it, and then there's some variable that they throw at
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, it's always something. I when I was writing Sasquatch Canada, for instance, um, I mean, the vast majority of cases in that, because I focused on Class A visual sightings of Sasquatch, right?
Sure.
And a lot of those sightings are like, the individual hunter or whatever is hanging out in the woods, and they see this animal, or what they take to be an animal, this large hairy bipedal primate, right, running through the woods. um and if you substituted in bear or moose or whatever, it's very much like they just had an unusual animal sighting out in the woods. And just about the time that I would get into this mind frame, well, maybe there's just a lot of physical Sasquatches up here, I don't know. Um,
So
I would come across a story where, Sasquatch would be walking down the side of the road and it would suddenly become translucent and disappear. Or, the Sasquatch would be squatting next to a berry bush picking berries, and this kid would walk up on it, and it would actually speak to him mind to mind. Or we can go on from there, but this is a couple of good examples from this.
shape shifting is another
Yeah.
example. All sorts of great, absolute
I didn't find any
fortune.
shape-shifting stories up here, but it certainly is the case. I mean, you read particularly Linda Godfrey's work, some of the stuff that she, in her Monsters Among Us book and stuff like that. Some of the things that she records in that book, you're just like, what? They did what? How did that happen?
I swear to God, I mean, I like my first time I had an encounter, I don't expect anybody to believe me, but I was standing next to a Crow Indian medicine man, and the two that we saw on the other side of the ravine, the one that ended up crawling up our side of the ravine and got 15 feet in front of us, it had to go through that tree. There ain't no other way, because I didn't hear any sound. I didn't hear any noise of the branches. I didn't hear anything. This is a big oak tree that was broken about 6 feet up in the air and broken and it snapped. It still had the leaves on it, right? It was just getting brown. And so you should have heard some of the rustling of the leaves, the branches, the thud of the ground if you jumped over it. I mean, it was only 35 yards away as well, 30 yards away. And it got 15 feet in front of us. And so it's like, how did it do it? The only way it could have done it is that somehow it went through the damn tree. I mean, I don't expect you to believe me, but it looked awfully physical to me. You know what I mean?
Well, and I talk about apparitions in the book, in the Forest Poltergeist. I do a whole section on apparitions, and what a lot of people think is an apparition. When you say that word, you get kind of this idea in your head of the lady in white floating down the staircase in the mist, and it's sort of translucent and da 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 da. That most apparitions, if you read Terrell's book on apparitions, a large majority of the apparitions that people see, they actually mistake the apparition for a physical person, because most of the stories in his book are ghost related, so to speak. So, but they're actually thinking that they're seeing a actual physical person, until the laws of physics take over and it walks through a wall, or it passes through a table lamp or something.
Goes through a tree.
Or walks through a tree. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people are like, I know that a lot of Sasquatch witnesses, and I'm not going to argue with them because I wasn't there. A lot of Sasquatch witnesses will say to their death that they saw a physical creature, and they may have. Again, I don't discount the idea that there could be a physical creature.
Well, the bare minimum, it appeared that way.
But it's certainly, whatever it was, whatever they saw, it appeared to be a physical creature. but it
Right.
could be just as it could be apparitional too. Um, I talk about Linda Godfrey's
Well, I mean,
theory.
how many of us are going to give the Bigfoot a bear hug to find out whether or not
I mean,
it's not happening? You know
nobody
what I mean?
nobody typically gets close enough to find that stuff out, and I mean, I can't think of anything just right across the top of my head, Chris.
No, no. And
And
so,
CP, yeah, possibly. I have a whole section in the book about possible human causes for some of these disturbances out in the woods, and talk about, for instance, the parapsychological theory of RSPK, random spontaneous psychokinesis, where certain people with repressed emotions actually have what amounts to a psychic temper tantrum. So some of those, and that manifest itself as an outburst of psychokinetic energy in their immediate area, whether it's the woods or house or whatever. And
well,
the idea of a poltergeist or other spirit being drawing energy from an electronic device. I mean, anybody who does paranormal research of any kind knows that one of the signs of that kind of activity is all of your bats going to bed, right? So yeah, entirely possible.
and it
Entirely
happens
possible.
also when you're doing Bigfoot or Sasquatch research out in the field.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
which is another one of those things where you got to think.
I was
Oh
thinking of
wait,
this.
those ghost hunter guys have that problem too, right?
That's right, and the UFO guys as well. So everyone seems to have this problem. But I was thinking too, though, about this, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying. And I just like simplify it. Say Napoleon Hill meets Sasquatch meets memes. If you can think that's what I'm saying. It's very simple, right? So we, through our power of our magnificent magnifying minds, and us focusing on a topic so much that there's nothing else that we focus on, that we can create at least the illusion or the appearance of something that we want so much to manifest, if that makes sense. Because I think about my experience. I didn't have anything happen to me. I'm 56. I didn't have anything like that in my life until I was 49 in 2017, and I focused on that primarily. And that's all I really focused on that year was Sasquatch, Bigfoot, right? And within 6 months, I'm standing next to a Crow Indian medicine man, and what damn well looked like a Bigfoot, what people call a Bigfoot, crawling up a ravine towards me. And there was two of them, right? And I know there was nothing special about me except for one thing. I was really focusing on that and nothing else. And
So
also, I think that's also with the meme part. I just think because we do it to each other, maybe collectively, since we're all thinking about it and we're all talking about it, and we're making all these videos and all these, we're interacting and constantly thinking about it, that we kind of help each other. It's almost like we think about like UFO flaps, that kind of thing. There seems to be a correlation with, like, say there'll be a report of a UFO flap, and next thing you know, or no, of a sighting, and it turns into a flap.
Yeah. So I talk a lot, or not a lot, but I do talk in the book about the idea of thought forms. There's a phenomenon in magic called the thought form. That is, if you read Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki's book, it's called The Magical Use of Thought Forms. She says that there are 3 things that you have to have in order to create a thought form. We have to have desire. So obviously there's, as you say, there's like probably literally hundreds, maybe thousands of people at any time that are focused on this Sasquatch phenomena.
Mhm.
You have to have visualization. In other words, you have to be able to form a very specific image of the thing that you want to manifest in your mind. And again, we have the Patterson Gimlin film and all of these things that people have based their idea of, this is what Sasquatch looks like. We have a very clear idea of what Sasquatches look like. And then you have to have imagination. In other words, you have to give life to your visualization. Something that novelists do all the time, right?
Mhm.
you have to give life to your visualization. So what do we have? We have people who have developed an entire story around how Sasquatch behaves, all of these different things that they're supposed to do, like tree linking and all of these other fun things that are associated with Sasquatch in the research. So we have all of the, excuse me, we have all of the pieces to be able to form a thought form. And when you have those pieces put together, magical practitioners talk about. I talk in the book about a group of Wiccans who did a working to actually defend some seals on an island somewhere, and they did these steps that I was talking about, and they there were sightings of beings they created on the island. There were several different sightings of this being that they created on the island. We saw this kind of thing manifest with the Slender Man too, where there were a group of people who got together who did these things, and people started to see this thing, and actually think that they were communicating with it.
And WT as well. WT. What also? Let's think about the Patterson film. Let's think about the whole scenario that played out there, right? With the different.
What were they doing?
The shamanic principle. What's going on with the Native Americans? With all the people involved, it was almost like they created the situation to happen, right? That.
Yeah.
And then they just gave us a couple, a few seconds of a video that have plagued us for how many years?
Yeah. And nobody, I mean, you get the skeptics going back and forth. You get the skeptics going back and forth about
so let's
whether the film is real or not, and all of this stuff, and trying to play it off as a hoax, and they can't do that, and so they took a picture of something out there. But
sure did.
We don't really have an idea. We don't really know what it was. Can I back up for just a minute? I saw Vic asking a question about footprints. And I talk specifically about footprints in the book because, again, this is something that is also associated with the poltergeist phenomena. The classic one that I come across is in Black Monk case, the Black Monk of Pontefract, which is a case in the UK. One of the things that happened in that particular case was that puddles of water would appear spontaneously in the house. They had the water cut off. They had the local plumbing people come in and check the house for leaks. They could never figure out why these puddles were manifesting. At the end of this case, the mom came downstairs one day, was watching, was looking at the carpet runner that went out to the front of the house, to the front door, and it was soaked. It was absolutely saturated. And as she was watching, footprints began to appear on the carpet, in the saturated carpet. So there's one example of footprints that were.
I'm in churches all the time too.
She couldn't see anything. I'm sorry.
Well, you hear about these stories of people finding these footprints in their churches, right? In the carpet in churches.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that.
Another one is in the Bell Witch case. There's an example in the Bell Witch case where this spirit, entity, energy, whatever you want to call it, was communicating with the younger Bell son after the older, the father had died. And said, "Look, I'm going to create these boot prints of your dad's boot prints in the snow outside," and there were boot prints manifested all through the yard there. So it's not beyond the ken that a poltergeist type phenomena, whatever that is, and we don't really know what it is. If it's actually decided that it's sort of mimicking Sasquatch, for instance, just as a hypothetical, might say, "Hey, yeah, let's leave some great big footprints out there in the wood." the interesting thing about these footprints is that sometimes those footprints will stomp out into the middle of a cornfield and disappear.
Or the snow, or etc. So I'm going to
wherever. So anyway, there's good reason to think that these paranormal phenomena can actually make footprints as well as a physical creature.
So if I've got 10 minutes before I bring 10, 15 minutes before I bring Mike on for the second half. So I'm going to bring up a couple things. First thing about footprints. So Mike and his crew that he works with out in the field, he works with Bigfooters, and also there's some guys so he's in Eastern Ohio, and there's some guys in Pennsylvania and some other guys up in Southern Michigan. They get together, right? And last year they were reporting and showing videos of 6-toed footprints, right? Now, what was interesting about that is, to me, is that at the same time they're reporting that, then there's other guys, like there's one guy that I've done a few shows with, JT from Sasquatch Confessions up in British Columbia. He's saying, no way, they're all 5-toed footprints, right? And he's ecstatic.
But they're not.
But then what happened to him is maybe a few months, if not sooner, him and his twin brother out there in British Columbia looking for stuff. And guess what they find? A 4-toe footprint.
Yeah.
and that's
then,
the way.
If you look at the research on the what became known as east of Boggy Creek, the Falk monster, there were 3-toed footprints.
That's right.
In that case. So particularly in instances, because primates have 5 toes. In those instances where you find the wrong number of toes, you have to wonder if there's not something more going on there. So talking in the book about people who don't go out in the woods to see Sasquatch, do not believe in it and still see it. I don't.
That's what happened to me.
I don't specifically address that in the book because it wasn't really within the purvey.
My first encounter.
It certainly does happen. It certainly does happen that skeptics see this thing.
So my first encounter, Travis, with the Crow Indian medicine man was in the middle of my town in a cemetery.
Yeah.
Now I live on the edge of suburbia and cornfields and so it does happen. I know it happens. It could happen to me. So there's one thing I want to talk before we cover on my end of things, because then we'll take like a 5-minute break, listen to some music, get everything set up for Mike and you to have your guys' conversation, and you let you guys roll. So the one of the things I want to bring up, because one of the things you brought up is this whole thing about make sure you know what you're dealing with, okay? And especially when it comes to poltergeist. Now I'm going to talk about my second encounter, and then I know it's like one of those things. Well, unless it's flesh and blood, they won't believe it, or whatever. It doesn't matter. I know what happened to my end of things. So September, 2017, it was December the 17th to the 19th. And this time period, I was hardcore Christian, and I didn't know what else. There was nowhere else to go. There's reasons why I became hardcore Christian, but I'm no longer that person anymore. But one of the reasons was the experience that I had. But it took me a few years, about 6 years more to really figure out the stuff. But because there's no one to talk to. But at the time, and when you brought this up, it really clicked for me, and I feel it's really important. And you brought up the stories about how those who have had some of these poltergeist experiences, who just try to use their religion or God or Jesus, some kind of thing to war against these things and cause more problems. So this is my story. So my story was, as I was coming out of my back door, taking my son to karate practice, as I was halfway between the back door and my garage, this thing that looked a hell of a lot like a Bigfoot. And by the way, until that year, I got scientific background. I'm 49 years old. There's no such thing as paranormal in my life. I understand nothing. This thing manifests, and it's right in front of my face, and it got even closer, about 10 feet. It looked massive. You could see the eyes, the face, the teeth, the shit-eating grin, the hair, and all that. I wasn't able to see the hands or feet, but it looked like a Bigfoot and all that. Now, my response to it, because I was talking to a lot of people who are evangelicals and that kind of, Pentecostals and this whole thing about rebuking them in the name of Jesus and all that, right? So I had the brilliant idea of doing that, right? So I started rebuking them in the name of Jesus.
How'd that work out for you?
It was the next 3 days were the worst 3 days of my life. It was absolute living hell, right? So I hurry up, get in the car, take my son to karate practice, processing what just happened to me in total freaking shock. I come back to the house, dreading to come back into the driveway. And then that house and what was going on in that house, we talk about poltergeist things like all sorts of stuff, like the pictures on the wall changing to weird things happening, the noises, all sorts of huge pressure going on me physically. I mean, I could spend hours, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. Of all the weird things that happened to me. And here I am praying in the name of Jesus. I'm even calling up this lady, Erica Shepherd, who's a famous deliverance. She's her own famous deliverance ministry, and she's on the internet and talks to all sorts of people. It's always giving counseling, listening to everything they're saying. The blessing in the house, praying in the name of Jesus, in the blood, in the name of Jesus, and things didn't get any better, and they just kept on getting worse and worse and worse for 3 days. So what happened was, on a Wednesday morning, it was about 3 a.m, that magic number, and I wake up. I'm sleeping in my son's bed with him because I'm totally freaked out. Even my son was changing, turning ghost white and all this kind of stuff. And I hear this walking on my front porch, right? There's something running around or walking on my front porch. And wakes me up, and I stay there for a couple minutes, and I start processing, and I get so freaking pissed off, right? And I get up and I woke my son up. I probably woke half the neighborhood up. I started screaming, F this and F that, and get the hell off my freaking front porch. And the funniest thing is that whatever was there started running back and forth and banging on stuff and all that kind of stuff. The confirmation of this 14 part of my journey is my buddy who lives upstairs is in the Air Force Reserves, works at the Air Force Base right here. I'm in Northwest Ohio, and he comes home between 3:20 and 3:30. He pulls into our driveway, and it's funny because I asked him the next day. He asked me how I was doing. I said it's the worst 3 days of my life, and he goes, "Well," and I asked him, "Have you seen anything strange?" He said, "Oh yeah. Last night, I saw this really huge, big dude who's all dressed in black. And he's like a black hoodie. I mean, he's the biggest dude I've ever seen in my life. He still can't accept the whole idea of it might be a Bigfoot or something like that. And he said it was in our backyard, and he was just walking in our backyard. And I'm watching this dude, and he's walking north away from our backyard. I get him back in my truck and chase after it to find out. I go, what the hell is somebody doing in our backyard at 3:30 in the morning, right? There's nobody supposed to be in our backyard, right? He chases after it and disappears. So then for a couple of months, I had like terrible migraines and all this kind of awful side effects. And eventually, but that was the worst that everything happened. And in retrospect, listen to you and other people and put other pieces together. I realized I probably caused a lot of my problem that day. If somebody would have told me, and I think this is really important, we talk about this a little bit, if someone would have told me, make sure you know what you're doing and what you're dealing with, I could have saved myself a lot of literal and physical headache and misery.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that, I kind of hammer on in all of my books. It's, if you're going to be involved in this stuff, a little discernment goes a long way. You mentioned that I talk about this in the Forest Poltergeist, and I do. In the Black Monk case, for instance, they tried to actually exorcise the poltergeist. They had Anglican priest come in and do the rite of exorcism for their home. Mm-hmm. Just pissed it off.
That's what I did.
It took a very anti-Christian sentiment after that, and actually did some things that were, I'm sure that your evangelical friends would have looked at this and said, "Oh, it must be a demon." It's like, not necessarily. One of the things that I do is I approach my work from an animist point of view. I believe that everything has spirits,
Sure.
and that there are a just we live in a vast ecosystem, which is composed of both physical beings and non-physical beings. And I mean, you need to know what kind of a being you're actually dealing with before you try to get rid of it.
That's our
Because the
problem.
right of
We
the
don't
right
know
of
what we're
Christian,
dealing with. That's the
yeah,
problem.
and in the rite of Christian exorcism is kind of like I mean, waving a weapon around in somebody's face. You're going to get one of two kinds of reactions. Either the person's going to run away, or they're going to go for you, right?
That's
And
what
a lot of
happened to me.
times, a lot of these spirits will actually go for you. I mean, I think that in any situation where you have a sort of what you might perceive as a hostile haunting, the first line of defense is going to be negotiation, and see if you can kind of work with whatever it is that's wandering around your house. It may be that this spirit world that we live in has a message for you, and they're trying to get something across to you. In this case, this giant Sasquatchy looking thing may have appeared to you to try and shake you out of your disbelief. you know
Or
um,
maybe my fanatical religious belief. I think that's a big
yeah,
part
yeah,
too.
that's
My
what
delusional.
but what you were saying is that you had a very skeptical kind of
Combination of
scientific
things.
materialist viewpoint of the spirit world, right? And sometimes the spirit world will appear to you and
Well, it
work
was
to
a
shake
giant
you out of that.
contradiction, right? A giant
Yeah,
contradiction. Someone who believes was operating in a religious system that's based on the supernatural, but not believing in it.
but
It
not
says something about
believing in
me.
the supernatural. Yeah,
It says a lot about
yeah.
me.
This is also why a lot of these exorcisms don't really work, because the people that are doing them really don't believe in this stuff. They have
Right.
this very materialist mindset, but they work in this religious paradigm. So there's this paradox, and when you have paradox working with the spirit world, a lot of times things just don't work out the way you expect them to.
Absolutely.
So
So
but I
let's
mean, you
let's do
kind of
this.
learned your lesson the hard way, but
Oh yeah, and
it's something that needs to be borne in mind. Is it's not always the case that you need to, the power of God compels you.
yeah.
Is
I
always going to
discovered how
work.
much power a God actually has. So and not
Mhm.
very much when it came to this stuff. So or anything at all for that matter. So hey, listen, let's take like a 5 minute break because I
Okay.
sorry to seem like the first hour's rush, but I really want to have you and Mike to have the conversation because I think you guys are going to have a fantastic conversation. It's going to be really enlightening. And let's take a 5 minute break. Use the restroom, do whatever you got to do, everybody, and then get things set up if that's all right with you, Travis. And
Yep.
so I'll just play some music for 5 minutes here, get everything set up, and get back. It will be Mr. T, MT Paranormal Life, along with the author and 6'7", clever man, an animist, and very important person in our lives, and I hope you will be part of our lives periodically for the next few years, to say the least. So let's play that music, do what we got to do, and then we come back. It will be Mike. Okay, folks? And I
Excellent.
really appreciate everybody's patience with me. And we'll play Karma Vulture. Let's play La Morada. Take it away, gentlemen. Oh,
right.
man, Mr. Chad.
Well, I just want to say first, thanks, Travis, for taking the extra time, to continue
absolutely.
on. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your book. For me, I'm still relatively new, only about 1.5 years. I've been doing research, and your books already helped me a lot going back at some of the things I'm going through now, and shed some light and really helped me think in ways that I might not have thought about before. So, I really appreciate that, and I thought your book was great.
Like I said at the beginning of before we got on the air, one of the things that I set out to do with my books is not to write, a magnum opus. What I want to do in all of my books is present people with some material, kind of introductory material, maybe. Give them some good examples, uh, and give them a bibliography that, if they're interested in a particular topic, they can actually follow up and do more research on their own. My books don't tend to go into the hundreds of pages. They're usually 200, 250, somewhere in there. So that you get a good introduction to whatever the topic of the book is. But you also have a pretty extensive bibliography where you can go and look things that you're interested in, if you want to follow up on it. And that's really why I do this. Is I really want people to get acquainted with some of these topics that maybe they hadn't thought about. I did a whole book on mist, fog, and clouds and the paranormal. That's made me freaky about walking in the fog now. So
Yeah, I know you talked about the silo. You guys were talking about it a little while ago, and one thing about me from the very beginning is I pretty much am not in any silo, and I think that's just me in general, and that's how my research has been going. So I kind of feel like, from what I've run into and seen with a lot of others who do whatever kind of research that I could just call paranormal, it makes me a little different. But to me, it just makes sense. I have a hard time with labeling anything, any of the things that occur or whatever happens. I honestly don't think I've ever been able to label something. And I always tell people I probably will never get any answers, and my biggest thing was always just to document the occurrences that happen and share that with everyone. It's just about, for me, it's about the experiences, and maybe some things will be revealed, some insight or some clue, which is what I look for, to maybe getting an answer of some kind. But that's kind of where I stand with how I do my research. So when you talked a lot about people in their silos, I see that a lot, and I think that's something that I see for me, that's a benefit, not to even try to go into a silo of labeling what just happened was because of something, So that's
I think that it's critically important to
right.
share these experiences, because there are people out there that are having experiences. They're seeing things, they're having, experiences. There's something in their house, there's something in the woods, there's whatever it is. And, a lot of these people, when I did the research for Sasquatch Canada, for instance, I ran across several witnesses, people who had seen a Sasquatch out in the woods that had never talked about it. They had actually held on to their story for however many years, decades sometimes, because they were afraid of ridicule. I think that it's critically important that these experiences be shared, people, um, so that people actually have an opportunity to understand that there are other people out there having the same experience. And that's the part of the reason that I do what I do.
Right. One thing I can say to that is, that's one of the things that I do, and my I could say my partner His name's Jack Riggs. He goes by the cameraman. He's a researcher that we started working together. But that's one of the things we do a lot is we reach out, or people will reach out to us because we'll put it out there for people to share the experiences. And then they'll come to him or they'll come to me and we'll look into it. And with like social media, which is, YouTube is my main platform, that gives the opportunity for all the people who maybe even want to come to us and not necessarily do it themselves, but we're able to put it out there for them so that, the experiences and things will be seen and other people can see it too. And everybody knows that the things they're experiencing aren't just, in their head, or, they get some kind of, what do you want to call it? Like they get some kind of vindication, I guess, or reassurance. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, because so many people, we're raised in this sort of scientific materialist paradigm where if you can't, taste it, touch it, smell it, feel it, etc., it doesn't exist. And people have these experiences to kind of segue into Patrick's question. Sometimes people just have these experiences. We don't know why. We don't know why.
Right.
This person can be walking down the road or driving down the road, see a Sasquatch, or they can have an encounter in their home or whatever. It's not always the case that they had an intention to have a particular experience. They just do, and when they do, those experiences can be, for want of a better word, they can be world shaking, because suddenly the paradigm that you've grown up with isn't necessarily applicable. You've seen something that shouldn't exist. You've seen a Sasquatch, or you've had a poltergeist experience, or you've seen a UFO, or any of these kinds of things. There are people that theorize that, some of these encounters may actually be sort of an initiatory experience that opens people to a wider view of their world, and cracks them out of this kind of scientific, materialist paradigm that we grow up with. So we don't know exactly why people have experiences. Sometimes it may be related to intention, and other times it may be all about what's going on in the other world,
Right.
or what's going on in their brains.
Like some of the stories too, like when you talk about some of the documented cases of things that have happened, those also, and this is becoming more, more of where I'm starting to go with, and the stories that have been documented could possibly lead to similar occurrences to maybe even help with that. And I go to the Bell Witch incident. And the reason why, when I heard you talk about this and I started looking it up, and when I read about it, we're going to a place now from somebody who came to us talking about experiences, and we've been working there. We call it Claim 3, because the claims are when people come to us about an experience, and we'll go check it out. So we just number them. But the incident, the things that were going on at this Claim 3 started to mirror what I was reading about the Bell Witch. And that was really intriguing to me. Like it started with seeing some kind of apparitions that were, like, you could say, cryptid in nature. Like the homeowner was saying he's seen large, shadowy entities, even pushed his trees over. And we were there and documented what we seen, and the trees were pushed over uphill and over. So we were trying to debunk what could have happened. And being that they were actually uphill was really interesting to us, as to add some, validity to his claim that he saw an entity push him over, because we couldn't come up with a reason how the trees got the way they were when they were on a slight decline embankment. So there were some other things with that case too, where the homeowner was experiencing, after that point, a lot of noise rapping on the house, and it started increasing. And I don't have a lot of the information, because my counterpart Jack is more in touch with him because he reached out to him. But there were experiences in his home as well with what seemed to be some kind of activity, maybe even poltergeist activity in the house. So once I started reading about the Bell Witch, I started connecting. A lot of the occurrences seemed very similar to what was, some of that case seemed to be similar to what, the homeowner experienced and what we've captured. And I'd like to share this with you because this was an actual Class A encounter that was captured on film live. And to me, it was one of the most amazing pieces of evidence I've ever seen of something manifesting itself right there and was captured on film. And this is at that Claim 3 site. So I want to share that with you and get your thoughts about what the heck it is. I'm gonna go full screen. How's that? Can you see it all right?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Now it comes into view to the right when he pans to the right. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll play it one more time just so get another look.
So, are we looking at infrared, or why is
That
the
is,
why
that
is
is
the
a
screen
red light. That's a red light.
Okay.
And
So it's just not to destroy your night vision.
right. And it's also very good with reflecting eyes in the dark, more so than white light. Let me go ahead and get back out of this here.
So, I mean, I'm not an expert on video or film or any of that kind of stuff. I'll make that disclaimer right away. So, what did you think you were seeing?
Wow.
I mean,
I wish
my
I knew.
view. Go ahead. Yeah, you
No, I was
yeah.
gonna say,
So,
I wish I knew what it was.
so looking at that, it seemed to me like whatever it was that you recorded on film was sort of translucent because I could see the
Right.
tree through it.
Right. It was.
Okay.
It was transparent, and it had those
So
sparkly effects around it.
it looked like almost like orbs within it, right?
Fireflies.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was. I mean, uh,
I mean, I'm not really
if
looking.
if you want,
I don't think anybody will have an answer on that. I just wanted you to see that because
yeah,
this is at the
yeah.
site where the activity at the Claim 3 happened, and that to us was just more evidence to things are going on there that we definitely don't understand. So like when we captured that was pretty amazing to me to actually catch that. Makes me wonder if it wanted us to see it or if it was just by accident.
Possibly. Now,
Yeah.
like I said, there's a story in Sasquatch, Canada. It's a Native American fellow or Native Canadian fellow. Sorry, I'm actually from the States, but I live in Canada now. Native fellow who was driving down the road in Northwest Territories. I think it was Yellowknife, and he sees a very clearly seemed to him physical Sasquatch walking down the side of the road. Of course, in his culture, this is not a big deal. Believe these things. They either see them as a type of animal. Some tribes see them as a type of person. Other tribes see them as more paranormal, as being creatures of the other world that manifest in our world. It depends on the group. But he sees this thing walking on the side, and it's a very standard Sasquatch sighting until he notices that this creature is beginning to become translucent.
Right.
And as he watches, it becomes more and more translucent until it just disappears in front of his eyes. That was the first thing that jumped into my head when I saw this film, because this whatever it was translucent.
Right.
It didn't have a real solid form to it.
Just that one
So
section. Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of some of the old ghost photos from the Victorian times, where there'd be pieces of a ghost, right?
Right.
That materialized. They had this whole theory about ectoplasm and spirits being able to manifest, the ectoplasm and so forth. My best guess, I mean, if it's not some kind of a camera defect or artifact or something like that, which didn't look like it to me, but again, I'm not a video expert. My best guess is you get some kind of a forest spirit out there that you managed to get a little picture of.
Right.
I don't think it was necessarily a Sasquatch, but
Right.
could have been. It seemed tall enough to be. But if you remember from the latter part of the book, I talk about all the different kinds of things that the poltergeist could be.
Right.
Um,
Like the
you
fairies.
know, up to including the Fae, yeah.
Right.
And there's certainly, uh, in the Norse religions and stuff, they have what they call landvatir, which are the land spirits or spirits of the land, um, which are very active in natural areas too. It's kind of a subspecies of the Fae, I guess. I think you could say that most of the Landvatir are Fae, but not all Fae are Landvatir. Would be the best
Yep.
way to put it.
Well, I
So
wouldn't definitely wouldn't expect you to. I
yeah.
didn't want
So
you to
I
think you
mean,
had to know what it was or have an
no,
answer
no,
for
no.
that.
I'm just throwing out some. I'm
Yeah.
spitballing some ideas for you. It's possible that that it could have been one of these spirits of the land. It could actually have been a spirit that was associated with those trees, or one of the trees that you were forming. The Greeks had their dryads, for instance, that were the spirit of a tree. That this being was actually attached to or associated to a particular tree. I mean, it's very much the case that you could have photographed something very unusual there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a fascinating piece of film. Um, of course, the skeptics are all going to start examining your stuff frame by frame and
Oh yeah.
trying to explain it. Um, but I mean, good on you for getting out there and actually doing the stuff and doing the research and trying to record the things. Um, 'Cause, I mean, if you spend enough time out there, you're liable to find some really interesting stuff.
Right. And that with a lot of the things like that when you talked about that in that book, the event, I think you're just talking about how the Sasquatch was perfectly visible and then it
Mhm.
like dissipated and
Yeah.
like you could say
It
was
it
just
just
disappeared or went
it just
translucent.
turned translucent and
Right.
disappeared, yeah.
And then
Um,
like other entities and like some of the poltergeist cases that manifest so like all those different um paranormal things that have been documented, and then with that piece of evidence there you see that something translucent is there. So
yeah.
that just adds to, that's how I look at it, is that right there adds to the evidence of some entities being translucent. And
Yeah,
you
there
see it.
are things out there. Yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's also yeah, I'm looking at the chat here. Yes, it's also called a land white, land votier. It's kind of the same critter. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, and it's indicative of the fact that there are things going on out there, right? Or in locations all throughout, you know, place, and we don't really know what the heck we're dealing with.
Right.
That's why I am very much of the opinion that when you go out to these things to investigate your claims and so forth, an attitude of respect is just paramount.
Absolutely. Right. And
Because
that's a big one.
I mean, you see these ghost shows and stuff where people are in houses and they're yelling at spirits and stuff like that. that's a good way in my mind to have an experience like what Michael was describing earlier on, where you get the headaches and you get the disturbances at home, all that kind of stuff. And there are spirits out there that can knock you on your what.
Right.
Um, it just depends on whatever it is that you're provoking and what level of energy they're carrying with you. Or they're carrying with them. So, I've always been um, an opponent of this idea of spirit provocation.
Right.
If you're going to
Exactly.
go into a situation like that, where you think that there's something going on in a particular area, it's best to approach it with respect, with kindness, with empathy, and hey, it doesn't hurt to leave some offerings,
Right. Exactly.
um, because there's no
You
reason not. It's like if you're meeting somebody new at a party,
and you're at
you
their
don't
place.
start.
Yeah.
You don't start yelling at them and telling them what an SOB they are,
Right.
and maybe they're beating their wife or whatever.
Yeah.
You try to approach them in a polite and respectful way, and you expect the same behavior in return. I think that a lot of the problem that investigators get into when they get into these more hostile things where things are pushing them or whatever is it's because they're not being respectful of what it is that they're investigating.
Right.
Because they think that the only way that they're going to get evidence is if they provoke something, and that's just not true. um,
Right.
I know of a fella who is actually an it's not called ordained. Is an initiated priest in Voodoo, which is the Haitian spirit religion, um, who does offerings to the ancestors before he does investigations, and frequently gets EVPs and things. With the spirits, they see that he's respectful. They see that he acknowledges their existence. He's not trying to pretend that they don't exist, and they leave messages for him and
Well,
stuff.
I get that
So
too. I get that quite a bit. Like,
yeah,
because one of the things that when I started, I was lucky to have a good mentor that started me, helping me understand how to approach, how to react, especially around native burials, which there are quite a few around
oh,
here.
yeah.
Her name's Ramona, and she's always
Hmm.
been like my guide that started me and helping me stay on the right track, which it worked just because of my nature. It was like second nature to me. And I've always been, wherever I go, especially claim 3 or anywhere, I don't necessarily I look at claim 3 a little differently, but not that much differently. Wherever I go, I always make an offering. And my most important thing is when I get there is to vocalize my intent, show and announce my respect to the land and to Mother Nature. I offer tobacco, and that's how I always start, because I
Hmm.
want to make sure my intent is known, which I have a feeling that all of our intents, whoever's with me, wherever we go, of anybody, I think whatever you're dealing with has a higher sense of being able to probably know your intent and your feelings. Like we talk about poltergeist off your
Hmm.
feelings. Seems
Yeah,
like
and
that kind
I
of known.
suspect. Yeah, and I suspect that the reason that you're able to capture things like this piece of video that you just showed us is because you do that.
Right.
I wish that all paranormal investigators would follow that model.
Right.
If you, I mean, if you are willing to um, approach these investigations with respect, then you're much more likely to get that respect back from whatever it is that you're investigating. And if you don't, then that's part of your discernment process. Helps to show that whatever it is that you're dealing with may not be resonant with you. I always hesitate to call things evil, because I think evil is a very
Mm,
relative term, but there are
right.
certainly spirit beings that do not resonate well with human beings.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I've
and
experienced this.
it's a disharmony, right? So, and if you have that experience, then there are other things that probably your mentor could teach you to deal with those kinds of beings. Um, so, But yeah, I mean, I wish everybody would do this. I get so tired of seeing this whole thing of people go into a haunting situation, and they're wearing their tight black t-shirts or whatever, and they're all being macho and yelling at spirits, and and then they get some kind of a semi-hostile response. Somebody gets scratched or whatever, and suddenly it's a demon.
Right.
um first of all, these guys don't know what the hell a demon is, um actually. And secondly, you know, if it actually were a demon, they'd be in a whole lot more trouble than they actually were in, because that particular type of spirit is extremely powerful, and is capable of put hurt on you if you're if you're open to it. Fortunately, you know, they're not common, and they're not. Um, their power over you is limited in that you have to be open to them in some way, shape, or form. So it's that's a whole other topic
Right.
of conversation. But I so wish that more people would adopt the kind of model that you're talking about, because I really think if you're looking to communicate with spirits, or you're looking for even cryptozoology stuff, I would love to see somebody do a Les Stroud type Bigfoot thing, um, where somebody goes out, they're alone in the wilderness, they're quiet, but they adapt your kind of approach to Sasquatch. They'll make offerings, and they'll do this kind of thing, and see what kind of things manifest around them during the course of their exploration, if they're willing to stay out there for a while. um, I think the problem that you see with a lot of Bigfoot research is you have all these people go out in the woods and are stomping around with cameras, and they're yelling, and they're making hoots and hollers and banging on trees and stuff, instead of putting themselves into a place where you know they could have an experience.
Right.
um,
That's like what I was
yeah.
doing today. I revisit a lot of the places like the swamp. We call it the
Mhm.
swamp. That's probably that was our first claim.
Okay.
I went back there today, and that's where we've had the rock throws that were, out of my experience doing this. There's been subtle objects that possibly could have been thrown, but nothing
Mhm.
really obvious until the place we call the swamp. And two occasions there was considerable size rock that was thrown with
Mhm.
a lot of velocity that hit the tree.
Yeah.
And those are documented on my videos. I've captured those,
Did
and they
Did you
hit the
see an
tree.
actual Sasquatch do that?
Right, exactly. No, that's why I was a class B.
Yeah.
This is, and to me, I I was never really like right on the bat, like going, "Oh, that was a Sasquatch." I already like knew. I just had a feeling. I'm like, no, I didn't eliminate that. That was a possibility. Just like I
Mhm.
say, I'm not really in any certain train of thought where whatever happens, I have, like I'm sure what it is. But it didn't seem, well, I don't know. That might be a little judgmental, but I didn't think that it would be a Sasquatch. I just
Mhm.
it just seemed more like the incidents in like some of the poltergeist cases
Yeah,
where some unknown
exactly.
force does it, and that was
Well, I
my
talk
feeling from it.
sorry. Yeah, I talk about that in in the stone throwing section of the book.
Right.
Guy Lyon Playfair, who documented the Enfield poltergeist case, toward the end of the book, he's talking about classic signs of a poltergeist, and one of the classic signs of a poltergeist is stone throwing,
Yeah, it
or
happens a lot.
throwing of other objects. He talks about a case in Brazil where uh, they were having poltergeist out in this home. Um, as often happens with poltergeist, it's centered around a particular person. In this case, a young 12-year-old girl. I think she was 12. Um, Again, there's another case where they tried to exorcise this girl, to get rid of this phenomena, and it just got worse. So the local spiritist neighbor was a type of spiritualism that is indigenous to Brazil. Offered to take this young lady in and took her into his home. During the course of the time that she was there, um, they counted over 200 stones
Right. I remember that
bounced
one.
off the
Mhm.
ceiling or the roof of this person's home. They were scattered all over his yard and everything. So, it's a classic poltergeist case, but with the stone throwing. In the again in the Black Monk case, the case of the Lego that actually beamed the reporter and hit him hard enough to actually leave a bruise that was still evident a week later. So you know everybody, the thing is that everybody that goes into these Sasquatch cases, you know, they somebody's had a sighting in an area, and suddenly the assumption is that there are Sasquatch in this area, and therefore everything that happens in that area must be Sasquatch, right? So your tree knocks, um, your stone throwing, the alterations of the environment where there the trees tied together and all those kinds of things, all of which could be just as easily assigned to a poltergeist phenomena, get assigned to Sasquatch because somebody saw a Sasquatch in that particular area. Um, so again, this is that place where I'm talking about we need to open our minds to all of the different possibilities out there. And yes, Constance, there are Native American legends of giants that actually, worked with the people. I can't really answer your question because I'm not that familiar with that lore. Um, but anything's possible. I mean, it's entirely possible that as I said, some of the tribes see the Sasquatch as simply another kind of person. Um, and and it's possible they could have worked in tandem with certain tribes. In other tribes, the Sasquatch is a monster that eats people. In other tribes, it's a being that comes from the other world and manifests it physically while it's here, and then goes back to where it came from. Um, you know, the lore is inconsistent of these creatures, and that's why I think that you know we need to look at all the possibilities from there actually being a physical creature to the more paranormal explanations. I think we need to leave our mind open to all that stuff.
One of the things too that always made me think that whatever's leaving the footprints might not be a primal bipedal animal walking around is that the times that we've experienced footprints, it's like we'll find one, two, or three, and more times than none, good prints, and they'll lead to like a tree.
Mhm.
And this has been pretty consistent. Like we found like one or two, and they like lead to a tree, and then that's all there is. There's just like one or two prints, and that's been pretty consistent. And they were pretty good, solid prints. Like they had toes, and I was always like, okay, if something's out here walking and walking, why is there just a few prints
Mhm.
and not like a track? So that kind of
Yeah.
always made me wonder to whatever's making them might not necessarily be in a physical form that's out here walking and walking and walking. It's something that somehow seems to come and go or change or something to that effect. And from the prints I found, that seems to be, what makes me kind of draw that conclusion or something like that. And
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And while there are examples of trackways,
right,
actual, fairly
I was going to
long
show you one
distance
of those too.
tracks, fairly long distance series of tracks. Um, it's so often the case that the researcher will be out in the woods and they'll find one track, Why is that? If you know anything about tracking, you know,
Right.
it may be that the surrounding strata is not conducive to tracks. But normally, when you find tracks, you've found a track trap. There's some mud or something that actually helps to catch the imprints, or soft soil, or that type of thing. There should be more than one track, but so often we find, oh yes, we found a good left footprint. Where's the
Right.
other one?
Right. Exactly.
Where are all of the other ones?
Now, I'd like to
We
show
found
you.
a good left footprint on a riverbank, on a muddy riverbank. There should be a whole series of tracks out there. Why is there only one?
I'd like to
So-
share this with you before
Sure.
before we go too long. Is this was probably so far, this is the only time that I've come across a set of tracks that's consistent. Like, I think we found 5 steps left, 5 steps right, and this was the most consecutive like tracks, and they were big. We measured it, and the tracks were consistent with the size, and they were about 19.5 inches.
Wow.
And you can
Yeah,
see the
that's
toes.
that's a good size.
And I'm going to show you the clip from the video when we found that, so you can check that out.
Okay.
All right, how's that look? Good.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Whoa! Look at this one. What the hell? Look at this, all the way down.
No way. Where in the is it going?
Holy shit.
No way. You could see our prints.
This one looks like it's coming back this way. This one here looks like it's coming back.
This is my prints right here.
That one's coming back this way. Now, if you can look at like our shoe and see the size of that, I mean, it's.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
good.
Yeah,
This was a short clip.
clearly,
I'll say this
a
was a
pretty
short
good
clip of
size.
it too. We measured
Yeah,
it.
I mean, yeah, it's really difficult when when you have these. To again, I'm not a video analyst or anything like
Yeah.
that. It certainly looks like something with large feet walk through there. But again, uh, you know, it doesn't look like it's a strata that you could cast from. It looked like it was wet.
Right. Yeah, it's like wet, beachy area right by the lake, right by the edge of the lake.
Yeah. So it wasn't a place that you could throw a cast on it. It's also, when you look at those tracks, the things that they're always looking for, the dermal ridges and all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of like you can't really tell there. What we can tell is that whatever made those tracks is pretty good size, because your feet
Yeah.
look tiny compared to it, right?
Right. Yeah, and then later in
so-
that we measured it, and like the prints were about 19.5 from tip of the
Yeah,
toe.
I didn't see any. Claw marks. So it wasn't a bear tracking. Side by side, or in its own footprint. This is one of the things that gets mistaken for Sasquatch tracks a lot. I mean, it looked like pretty clear toes on a couple of those tracks. So, I mean, something was traipsing along that riverbank.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I was surprised because, again, I don't have any real expectations whenever we do this, and the times we have come across some evidence of like a footprint or two, like I mentioned, sometimes we found some, and then there was that night, and when I seen that trail going down, I was like, whoa. I'm like, you heard me, I dropped a couple choice words that I edited out, but I was really shocked that
Yeah.
it was right there.
I mean, particularly if you're walking along at night and you find something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it tends to make you look around a little bit. I've been out in the Arizona wilderness at night, haven't run across any tracks or anything. I can tell you that some areas of Arizona, I was in the Superstition Mountains at the time. That's a paranormal event all in and of itself. That place is just loaded with, you know, uh, the native Apache people in that area saw the Superstitions as the home of their thunder gods, and there are places that you can go, where you walk into side canyons and so forth, where you're just like, I maybe should not be here. I'm gonna back out of here and go somewhere else. I've spent the night out in those mountains, and it can be pretty spooky. So if I were wandering along, and found those big old tracks, I would be like, okay, either somebody's messing with me, or there's something else out here besides me, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
Right.
Again, I applaud you for having the gumption to go out and look at this stuff. It's
Well, thanks. Thank you for that.
it's tough. I mean, it's tough to find the time. It's tough to find the money. It's tough to, your family and so forth can be less than supportive in some cases, and um, it shows a lot of commitment and interest to be able to go out and do this kind of stuff. So again, I applaud your efforts there, and the stuff that I've seen. Again, I can't be. There's no way that you can be sure that somebody wasn't messing with you. I mean,
It's always possible. I always keep
it's
those
always a
thoughts in my head
possibility.
too, right?
There's always the possibility of a hoax. But it might not have been. And all of that stuff, in my mind, you can look at all this stuff and everybody can say, oh, fake, 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 it's just fake. But you get so much of this stuff piling up on top of itself, and then you have all of these witnesses out here who claim to have seen something. You have all of these class B experiencers who have clearly had something happen to them in the woods that sometimes actually driven them out of the woods. Eventually you have to look at this stuff and you have to say, if we were presenting this in a court of law, a jury would probably, find that there was something going on out there. Now,
Right.
what it is, we don't know. What it
Exactly.
is, we don't know. We just don't know. And that's the other thing that kind of irritates me about the whole Sasquatch reason. You have all these people walking around acting like they know what Sasquatch is, and they
Right.
don't.
So many of them. Right.
They really
know,
don't.
and
I mean, they've settled into this idea that they're looking for a bipedal primate, and that's all there is, and they
That's
ignore all the evidence to the contrary.
right.
You
That's their
know?
silo they're in, right? That's the silo they're
That's the
stuck in.
silo.
Yeah. And for me, I've always been fascinated by the voices that I've captured, and that's pretty much always been my main focus, is listening and seeing, because that's been consistent with my research, and that's kind of my main focus. But in the process of doing that's when I've come across things that I can't explain that I've
Mhm.
seen, and then that's led me down like the rabbit holes that most people who have interest, whether they research it or whether they study it, they go down those as well. But I have a device. It's called a necrometer, and it's a communication device that was designed, but it's very unique. There's a speech mode on it, and the speech mode, basically, it's a database of letters and like groups of letters, and it can be manipulated. And what you end up getting is messages that get put together in a series, like the letters get put together and can produce messages. And there's a guy named Stephen Huff from Huff Paranormal. I watched him and I learned about what the device really does. And then I'm like, well, this seems like this could be good evidence, because there's no junk. There's none of these databases like some that are preset messages or words. So you don't know if you're getting an authentic message or if it's just recycling random messages.
Mhm.
So I started trying it out, and what I found ended up blowing my mind. Like, I get messages that say things that it's, you know, and he even says it's impossible to put together messages in that kind of a database and say a sentence and say words, because the database is made to just out of just letters. And that has really turned my research like into a direction that amplified what I was trying to do, because now I'm hearing messages that are blowing my mind. So that's what was my focus. And then I end up, you know, I go with the cameraman, and then we come across strange things, class B encounters, rocks being thrown, vocals, light anomalies, those kind of things happen. But I kind of don't, you know, I'm in that mindset where I'm not expecting that to happen. And and it's amazing what kind of things, you know, we've run into in just presenting our presence. And in a way, maybe we are manifesting some of the things that might be because of emotions, or it might have something to do with the land. These are things that I don't have an answer for, but I keep my mind open because it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's basically a situation where if you reach out, then chances are good that something's going to reach back.
Right.
You know, maybe not all the time, but some of the time. And as you say, some of these phenomena that you're encountering may be things that you're creating yourself. But that's a mystery in and of
Right.
itself,
Exactly.
that the human is capable of doing these kinds of things, right?
Right.
So it's all part of the big mysterious something that we're all interested in. Um, you know, I mean, the only thing that I would say about messages is, yeah, I mean, whether you're getting them from some technological device or, you know, Ouija board or whatever, um, you know, it's entirely, you know, it's entirely possible to receive messages from uh, other beings using these kinds of uh, technologies. Just have to remember something that a mentor of mine used to tell me, uh, you know, many moons ago. Uh, he said that, you know, just because somebody's dead doesn't make them smart. Um,
Right.
you know, so take the things that you get with a grain of salt. Um, uh, you know, and I would add that, you know, just because someone is dead, you know, doesn't necessarily make them a nice person. So again, you know, there's always the idea that you need to take things with a grain of salt. Um, there's a lot of mischievous beings out there that will pretend to be other things. You know, that so you know, there's a certain amount of discernment to be used when you're dealing with spirit messages. But I mean, again, you got all this raw data that you kind of got to take and you got to put it together. You got to look at it, and then you, as the human being, have to make some decisions about, you
What I
know,
think.
what do you believe? You
Right.
know, what do you believe? What seems like the real thing to you? What's your intuition about things? All that sort of stuff. So that you know, I mean, you can present because obviously you're out there presenting this stuff to people. Um, you know, you can
Right.
try and put it forward to people in, you know, the best light you can. You know, and
Right.
say, hey, I don't really know what this is. This is kind of
Right.
what I
Exactly.
think. You know, here we
What they
go.
see is
You
what
know,
they
what do you
get.
guys think?
Right. That's
You
how it
know, what do
goes.
you
I
guys
mean,
think?
it's just what you see when I, you know, whenever I do my investigations and I put the videos up and the evidence, I try to point out things, amplify some of the sounds that are subtle, and I let
Mhm.
everybody, I mean, it's basically what I hear is what you're hearing, and what we see is what, you know, everybody else is seeing. And we let everybody else draw their own conclusions. And, you know, I started coming up with some of my own from doing the research, like you said, and my intuition. And, you know, I've got some opinions about the voices. I don't necessarily, I'm not under the opinion that they're always voices coming from people who have passed on. I think
Mhm.
it's possible that a collective consciousness could be something that might be connected. And I draw that conclusion because it seems like the voice, the messages I get are, they don't make sense. Like they're just
Mhm.
residual, or it almost seems like they're people's thoughts. It's very
Yeah.
strange, some of the things that are said. But that's just very interesting. This whole thing is very interesting to me, and that's why I keep doing it. It's always about the curiosity, and I do it my way, and I try not to be influenced by others and the way they do things, but I'm starting to branch out more because I see the importance of looking at research, like when I read your book, and I listened to what you said. It just makes me realize more that I do need to expand my research out, because I've already put together some things I would have missed if I hadn't gotten some of the information like you put out.
Well, like I said, I've been reading this topic for decades.
Yeah.
There's always more stuff to learn. I don't pretend to be an expert. I have my opinions about things just like everybody else does, but I think my opinions are pretty well informed. Like I said, I've been reading in this topic. I've been researching this topic for decades, and not just Sasquatch or not just UFOs or not. I've been, like the whole schmear has been interesting to me. So I'm always happy to see other people doing that kind of stuff. If you haven't read the work of people like John Keel yet, definitely recommend him.
All right.
He's got some really, really super interesting ideas. You may agree with some, you may agree with none, but it's always nice to have that indication. If you're interested in the UFO topic at all, particularly Jacques Vallée is a guy that you really need to take a look at too. And then, of course, as Mike would say, there's always Joshua Cutchin, who will, tell you about all kinds of different things that you didn't know about, and make you interested in them,
and turn you into an English major as well.
Well, that too, yeah.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to shed some thoughts. Also, one thing I've noticed, with some of the poltergeist cases, and it seems like one thing that was interesting to me, because I hadn't done much research about poltergeist, and I'm starting to realize how important that is, and I'm trying to catch up on some. And that was very interesting to me, that it seemed like, especially at the Bell Witch, like there was a cycle, and they all seemed to have like a cycle or some kind of goal. And no matter how much you try to intrude or try to get them out or do whatever, it's like they're going to finish their cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the time's right, they'll leave. Like that was interesting with Bell Witch, was like how it made one of the things it made known once it started communicating was that it was going to see old man Bell die. And then if I remember that right, that was it. It was going to be there to, I guess, to witness him dying, or being here to see him die. And then it wanted the daughter to break off the engagement with her fiance. And then after the old man died, and then she decided to go through with that, shortly after it stopped. And
yeah, it seems very evident in poltergeist cases that there is an arc of operation that happens where the activity will increase to a certain point, it will reach a climax, and then it will decrease until it finally goes away.
Right.
If you're interested in poltergeist stuff, definitely read Colin Wilson's book, which is just called Poltergeist.
Okay.
It's like the thing that the book that actually really, it's got it all. It's got all kinds of cases in it, and it's super interesting. And you might also be interested in Guy Lyon Playfair's book on the Enfield poltergeist, which is called "This House is Haunted."
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting story. I was watching some of the documentary on the Enfield case, where the reporters that, they had the audio recordings and some of the video that you could still see. And that was very interesting. And then the more I looked at other cases, I seen the pattern of something speaking through the family members, the focal point. You talked about the RSPK factor. And, that's a lot of information that if you're might run into something like that, to have the knowledge of what you're dealing with is important.
So, gentlemen, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So it's 2 hours. I'm an old man.
Yeah, me too.
Watson is not a young buck either. So it's up to you, gentlemen. We can take another break and do another third hour, or we can start wrapping it up. What do you guys want to do?
I really need to wrap it up, guys.
That sounds good.
I'm losing my voice.
Well, you really did a good job tonight, Mr. Watson. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And
Constance, I'm wondering what question it is I didn't answer. I'm having trouble trying to watch the chat and talk to you guys at the same time. So.
I'm not quite sure she was asking either.
Yeah.
But
no, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on with you tonight. Again,
well, hopefully we'll do another one in the future.
Yeah.
Travis, I appreciate you. Your sense of humor, your attitude toward this whole situation, and your wisdom. So, thank you for joining us.
Well,
I think that
I don't
those.
know how wise I am, but I've definitely had.
I mean,
as
the
I
most
said,
important.
I've had a lot of exposure.
The most important message that I get from this is that to approach this much more holistically. Stop staying in your silo. Stop thinking that you got all the answers. You know what I mean? If you're solely in one camp, why not try to broaden your horizons? And you just might find some more interesting phenomena and mysteries to our life. You know what I mean? But
if you don't mind, there was one last thing I wanted to touch on that I asked you, Travis. It's regarding like maybe RSPK like in a way, but things that happen outdoors in the forest.
Okay.
'Cause I had some feelings about just the energy of the forest itself, with potential energy of the environment. Do you think, or have you ever given thought about some form of that with the actual wildlife somehow affecting, maybe manifesting somehow from stress or from factors? I know, we're not talking about the human aspect of that, but maybe the nature side, animal side of that.
I think it's entirely possible that, I mean, obviously we exist, as I said earlier, in a vast ecosystem of both physical and non-physical beings. This is my working hypothesis of life, basically.
Right.
So, it's entirely possible given the right set of circumstances, and I can't really say what those circumstances would be,
Right.
but the right set of circumstances that your connection with, or a person's connection with, the being in the forest around him or her, be they physical or non-physical, could result in some of these phenomena too. Sort of, animal telepathy, if you want to go that far. So yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that some of this stuff could be caused by critters, because there's plenty of critters out in the forest. I don't think your critters are throwing rocks at you, but
no, I meant like maybe affecting it the way a person would, but somehow.
But they certainly, the animals could certainly be, affecting the local environment, if you follow kind of a shamanic idea about things, animals have there is a wolf, which is, a canid creature, and then there is the spirit of the wolf, which has powers far beyond that. So, you could be contacting something along that line as well. I mean, when you open your mind and start thinking about this, outside of the silo, there are all kinds of things that could be going on out there. I follow, very kind of, spirit related path, but, I see some folks talking about scientific stuff too, and there's stuff out there about that too. So, But again, I want to take an opportunity to. I've been watching the chat over on the side of my screen here, and I wanted to take an opportunity to thank everybody for their input, for their questions, and all those things. I apologize if I didn't get to all of them, but I'm trying to do two things at one time here.
Yeah,
So it was definitely
a big part
definitely
of
a pleasure chatting with everybody, though.
part of this, Travis, is introducing you to our audience, because I'm sure that most of, in fact, I put money on that none of them knew who you were, but now they do, because we were.
Now they do.
And so, and don't forget to get his book. It's like $15, and it's a couple.
All of my books are on Amazon. All of my books are on Amazon. They're all available on Kindle. And if you happen to be a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can read them for free. So it doesn't get any better than that. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Hope you enjoyed
this opportunity and actually for getting to know your audience a little bit too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And with that, if there's anything else that you want to say, Mr. T, for tonight, say something. Thank you to the audience for
I'm good. We kept them long enough.
Yeah, so this was excellent. I'll end it with some music, and then I'll close it out with that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let's listen to some more Karma Vulture. What a cool name. Hey, there's still 7 people left. Let's give them a little bonus, shall we, before we end it? You want to, Mike?
Are we still live? Okay, we are.
I will give them a little bonus. There's like one of my people, and there's one of you, 6 of your people. So what did you think? What were your thoughts about tonight in the show?
I thought it was great. You know, I know he probably does a lot of podcasts, and you know, I didn't want to think I was trying to make him give me an answer to what it was that we seen. You know, so I was just kind of showing how he talks about the poltergeist of the forest, and a lot of the things that I showed and pretty much that happens all the time are right in that same avenue that he talks about.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, should we let? What do you think about it? If anybody wants to, inviting them up, asking them what they think. If you got a half an hour, Mike?
Well, actually, my son, I'm going to be giving him a ride to work here. So
okay.
I'm going to have to make it short. I'm going to have to go.
All right. Well, so we'll just. I thought it was pretty impressive. I thought Mr. Watson, W.T. Watson, the author.
Yeah.
Forest Poltergeist has something to make us think. And when we're out in the woods, I've been trying to say this for a while, that there's a whole lot more in them woods. Got plenty of images.
Thanks, Diesel. Yeah, and I'm not a big reader. Like I was telling you, I went on Amazon, and they have like a subscription to their audio books library, and that book, the Forest Poltergeist, his book is on audio, so I actually listen to it. So if anybody's not a big book reader, you can always listen to it.
Yeah, I would have got the book, but I had so many debts, I had to get a new chair. Which, by the way, just to, I'm shilling because I'm Ellen. I'm going to do it. So if any of you out there who's interested in helping me out, at least, because this cost me a lot of money to do this, believe it or not. And so if anybody's interested in donating, you can donate to Michael Adams, like PayPal, ORD3, or Cash App, same thing, Michael Adams, ORD3. $5-10, it all adds up, you know what I mean? And I spent a ton of money. I had to get a new chair this month. I had to get new, Filmora, because everything just adds up, computer and everything, just to do a show like this. And, obviously I don't do it for the money or for the numbers or for the subscribers. So I do it because I think it's an important enough issue to share with people. And, I appreciate you, your willingness to join me, bro. I think
always.
I think it was, when I was thinking about it and I was listening to him in his interviews, I was just like, he would be a great addition to this particular show because of the field research that you're doing. And it's like some kind of confirmation from his book as well, and connections, you know what I mean? As time goes on, who knows? Maybe he'll end up being on your show sometime down the road, that kind of thing, or whatever. So who knows? But I thought it was real positive. So everyone was really cool about it. Even Raptor was he was calm. He's like the dude who shows up.
Comments. I think I saw something. I saw something. I was really in the zone there trying to talk to him and show, so I missed a lot of what was going on in chat.
Well, that's the whole idea. So that's what I wanted too, is like, which worked out great for us, right? First half I talked, second half you talked. When I was talking, you were managing the chats, and when we were talking, I was managing the chats. So that's the best way to go about it. Oh, wait a minute, really? Hey, thanks, bro. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks,
if anybody he needs to donate, there's everywhere go and subscribe to Diesel in New Jersey, his YouTube channel. He's constantly out in the field himself doing his thing, filming all sorts of tree structures, things are in those trees. It's some amazing images too and he's in the same understanding as we are as well, that there's more going in those woods than just simply Sasquatch. So that's something to think about in the future, is that, you know, that when we're out there, that we try to be more holistic and supportive to each other, try to make things happen, you know what I mean? Support each other. And you know, we don't have to be, I know there's a lot of people out there that think like they need to take sides or war against each other or all this kind of silly stuff. And the fact is, we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure out what the heck's going on, right? And none of us have complete answers. But I do think that he's right. I think that what guys like Diesel's doing, that Mike's doing, and MT Paranormal Life is doing, as far as, you know, being more broad in our scope of research. And I know one thing, in the next couple of days, I'm going to start doing my field research again. And I know I'm confident. I filmed what somebody call a Sasquatch. I filmed back in May 15 of last year. But you have to, if you're interested, go to my channel and check it out. And see, it's full moon tonight, is it? No kidding.
I tried something a little different today. Earlier today, I was out with cameraman. We went back over to the swamp, and I just had an idea. And I think, again, when I was finishing up with his book, with Travis's book, and I had like a thought, and I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go back to the swamp, and I made my own little structures in the areas around where we had the rock throws, the two big rock throws. And right. I went to those sites, and because the rock's still there, we still have it where it last was, and it's still there. So I went there and I made like a little structure around the tree, and I made like a little platform with some of the sticks, and I put the rock on it by the tree. And then I went to the other tree, kind of did the same thing with the rock where the other rock throw was. And then I made little structures because I just was curious. I'm like, because nobody goes back there, you know, where we're at. So I'm like, let's see if there's any kind of interaction with these little structures I made. So that's something I thought I'd give it a shot. Some kind of
doing that along with like thinking about it, focusing on it, putting some time every day on it, and really focusing on the structure. I wonder how that, like, you know what I mean? Do it like you're doing now, and then see if there's any kind of difference, and then try then also to compare it and do like maybe focus on it a lot, and then the next time you go and see if there's any kind of difference. Maybe I don't know if it's really how scientific you can make it happen, but at the same token, it might be a confirmation to you as far as the power of our minds and how we create some of this stuff, or how, you know, right. I don't, influencing the elements, the interdimensional realm, you know, to make these things happen.
One of the things that I didn't mention about it, but I did go back, you know, like I said, I went back to the swamp there, and I made those little structures. And when I went up to where the site was of that first rock that got thrown, to back up a little bit, like after those events happened, I came up with an idea, and we did a video for that night, and we took those glow balls. They're like, they have inside the ball is like the same material like a glow stick, and you just like smack the ball down, and then the balls will get the, you know, you just shake up the ball, and it's like a glow stick in a ball. We took those there, and this was, you know, relatively soon after that second rock throw. And then we started really getting curious about what could be throwing these rocks that will keep throwing stuff. So we took the balls and we were playing catch, and we were throwing them around the area and leaving them. And we were just curious to see if, like, you know, if they would throw one of them. And when I went back there today, I went back to that tree where the first rock was hit, where I was going to make my little structure. And I found one of those balls laying by that tree. Okay. And it wasn't there in the past. It wasn't there before in the past. It wasn't even there the last time or two we were there after that happened. And I found one of them there today, and it was laying by the tree. I took some photos because when I went there, I didn't do any recording. This was just kind of like one of those times where I'll go and I'll just interact without having the presence of a camera or something to, you know, add to the mix. I just was there by myself, And I went up there, and there it was. That ball was laying by a tree, and I was like, holy crap. And I kind of laughed about it. And then when I made the little structure by that tree, I took that ball and did the same thing like I did with the rock at the other one. I put the ball on the little part of one of the branches that I made. So I'm curious to see what happens when I go back there now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Diesel was saying something very similar with the blue bottle. One of the things I want to share with you guys. So I did the couple shows with JT from Sasquatch Confessions, and we were interviewing Brian Bland. He's talking about ground glyphs. And after the day after that we did the show, so this is the 21st. So it was what day was it, that show? Let's look at the calendar real fast. This Monday was the 19th, right? So Monday was the 19th when we did the show with him. And then a couple days later, I was paying attention to, so I thought it was the day after, but it's actually 2 days after. So anyways, in my side yard, and I wish I'm going to do a video as where it's located so people understand what happened here. And I would not be surprised if the spirit realm decides to mess with it and have it I'll be gone tomorrow. So, but anyways, this is very subtle, a tree structure or ground glyph. Now it's might be hard to believe and accept, and I myself have a hard time with it as well. But this is in between my house and my neighbor's house. There's no trees in that area. There was some tree work that was done like over Christmas and the beginning of January. This is of course, I filmed this on the 21st, and there's an X there. Now, maybe I'm just imagining things. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But if I do the video tomorrow and it's still there, you'll see that there's literally no trees, and there's two-story houses. There's the odds of the branches showing up there are pretty slim to none. I don't have any trees in that area, and they just showed up. There's 15 feet right now behind me. Now, it's not the most impressive ground glyphs is like what other people claiming to get, like Brian Bland. But my point in bringing this up is that, and he says it's all Sasquatch, and I don't necessarily, I don't believe that it's all Sasquatch, and I have a hard time that it was actually Sasquatch that even did it, because it's such a close area, really close to where I sleep, where I do my stuff, and do the show. But it's like 15 feet literally behind me, and I'm just have a hunch and a suspicion that because of focusing on that time with Brian Bland, that something else was paying attention and just gave me like a little gift, if you will. But I don't know for sure. I mean,
I just gotta go with your intuition, your gut. Usually, you'll know.
But I know one thing: it wasn't there earlier, and I didn't notice it. But then, but what is it? Is it just? It could be power suggestion on his part, or could it be that what I've come to realize from my own experience and my own research is that when you focus on something and you put enough time into it, it somehow manifests one way or another. So if you focus a lot on filming something like a Bigfoot, you're going to end up filming something that kind of looks like a Bigfoot. It could be only just a shadowy apparition, but it's still, you know what I mean? If you focus on looking for footprints, you guys could be a perfect example of this, right? You focus on looking for footprints, and what do you guys end up doing? Filming footprints, right?
Well, yeah, I mean that seems to be what he talked about, and it seems like in cases, at times that could happen. But like sometimes, like that night with the footprints in the sand, I didn't really have any specific, like, I guess something I was trying to manifest, or I was like thinking like, oh, I hope I see this, or I hope I see that. It was just like that night, it just caught off guard. Whether or not there's more to it, and maybe it's still, you know, because of, I mean, you could always say that I'm always aware and thinking of things that have happened. Will they happen again? I mean, maybe it was manifesting and I just wasn't really focused, but it was there, you know, the thought was there. So, you know, that's something that I think about, and, you know, I try not to get too focused or trying to think like, oh, I really want this. I really want a rock to be thrown, you know, like we got to have a rock thrown tonight. Come on, throw a rock. Like I never get those kind of thoughts wherever I go. I kind of, you know, I got my device. It's more of like, I just listen and then I do some communicating, ask some questions and talk, but I usually don't ask for things, you know.
Right.
Sometimes I will, but it'll be simple stuff. Like I'll knock and I'll make some noise and I'll ask if it can do it. Can you make that happen? Can you knock the same way I did? Can you make the noise I made? You know, maybe there's something to manifesting that. It doesn't always seem to happen, but there could be something to, that's why things happen for sure.
Sure. And for me, I don't do any of that. I mean, once in a while when I go to the grocery store or whatever, I might ask the spirits to intervene, make sure I have a close parking lot, but that's about it. As far as I wasn't asking for that. And when I go out, like, and do my research, like I told you, the only thing I just talk about is, and it's not a religious thing, and a lot of people will take it that way. You know, I talking about the Lord of all spirits. For some reason, that helps manifest stuff. Now, I'm not saying to, you know, do whatever you want to do, and it's not a religious thing. I know a lot of people misconstrue when I say that, but it's just, I think the fact that you just bring up all the spirits, for me, I end up filming all sorts of things. Like behind me, there's a Bigfoot. My neighbor's, well, I think is a Bigfoot, a shadowy entity that looks like a Bigfoot, and which is interesting because, okay, so it's in my neighbor's yard. It's on the other side of the rail track, so it's 2 houses to the east of me, right? It's in their driveway looking at me, and as I'm getting into my car. This is the middle of the day, and this shadowy entity, you know what I mean? I don't know if it's to just blow it up. And it's not because there's anything special about me. It's just the fact that I bother to film in my neighborhood, and when I leave the car, I film. When I start filming when I leave the car or get to the car, and before we even go to a site, you know what I mean? And then when I come back, I also film when I show up again and take stills. And I just think they're paying attention to us regardless of where you're at. It's a big entity, and when you pay attention to that, you know, it's pretty big. It's got his big paws wrapped around there and all that kind of stuff. So it's not perfect. Is it what you call an apparition? Sure, but I mean, why is it showing up in the middle of the day? You know what I mean? It's a pretty clear image, though. My point in all that is to encourage people. You know, even if you can't do what Mike's doing and go out in these research areas and, you know, areas that most people can't get to, that doesn't mean you just can't still start filming things and doing your own research, because I believe they're everywhere, some form or another, whether it's Sasquatch or all these other interdimensional beings. And the reason why I believe that is because I'm filming it. That's, you know what I mean? So well, when I say they're everywhere, we know what these energy beings or what these entities are, what these spirits are. That's another thing, but they're there. And I think if everybody else just did it yourselves, I think we could all develop our own data point and so our own, you know, information. I think it'd build a more holistic picture to what we're dealing with. Anyways, I know you got to take care of your son, so let's close it up here. Thank you, Diesel, for your comments. Thank you for your donation, and thank you for everyone else for showing up. And we've done this for almost 3 hours.
Done. All right.
We'll try to do it again, bro.
All right. Yeah, we will.
I'm gonna end the stream now, folks.
All right, guys. Good night.
Thank you.